Okay, next up, Dune Messiah. Very short, spoilers. Very short book. It introduces a lot of things that are very plot essential in the universe. Um, Golas, which are clones of dead bodies, basically. Um, until this book, they've never figured out how to properly return one's memories from their original life, and they figure that out at the end of the book. Um, they introduced Tleilaxu, which are um, they are. I can find a good descriptive analogy, but it's not very good. Okay, so historically, Jewish people have always kind of been ostracized. Um, a lot of horrible stereotypes that are not true, physical stereotypes, all this horrible stuff. That is essentially what the Tleilaxu are if they were all true. They are, but again, it's like not true. I don't want to preface that, but it's like, but the Tleilaxu in this universe, they are kind of goblin-like. They're really short. They got like fangs instead of regular teeth, gray-skinned, very much like little goblins, but they're super greedy, very secretive, very religious, and basically everybody hates them. Like dirty Tleilaxu is a set of two words that are thrown around a lot in the Dune universe. But basically, they are the sole proprietors of a technology where they can clone, they can grow in these vats replacement body parts or just whole new people. And they also have this different species of human because there's no aliens in the Dune universe. They just have humans who are kind of pushing the limits of evolution. They have shape-shifting humans called face dancers, and they're essentially slaves. None of them really have free will. And these and so there's a plot between Paul's wife, the old lady who tested Paul at the beginning of Dune, a guild navigator, and those are introduced as well. So there's a guild. Basically, they don't have light speed as is traditionally described in a lot of sci-fi books. They have Holtzman engines, and Holtzman engines instead of actually like instead of like taking people there at a super fast speed, they like teleport people. So like, you know, like it's like the stuff in Interstellar, like how the guy described it in Interstellar. Like you got point here, point A, point B. Holtzman engine just folds space on itself, and then the ship's on the other side. So like it would like start here, end up over there. And so they would do that, except there's a lot of risk about like, oh well what if you fold it and then the guy like pops out outside of everything, or what if it ends up like way off where he was supposed to go and it's like a planet's there or something, it just like shatters. So they have these guild navigators, and basically they are the spice junkies of the universe. They don't even breathe regular air anymore. They breathe spice in like a aerosol form, and they're stuck in these tanks, and it's thick enough that they can swim in it. So their bodies are a lot more fish-like and like webbed feet and hands. And all this spice gives them just enough precognition to just see like how to move through space and see kind of like when the wind's at and not at their backs politically. Which is why Paul was such an achievement, because he doesn't need anywhere near that amount to be able to fully see the future for the next like 100 years and like all the possible futures. Um, yeah, it's like a navigator, Paul's wife, the old lady, a face dancer, and one of Paul's priests, one of his major priests. It's these five collaborators, and they're basically plotting to kill Paul because Paul has now been emperor for 12 years, and it was an absolute disaster. Paul led the Fremen on a holy crusade and killed 61 billion people, and he like completely wiped all life off the face of like 90 planets and destroyed like some 40 religions, I think. It could be wrong. I don't, yeah, I have no idea. Okay, I don't know. I can't find it. But so Paul's emperorship was definitely, yeah, it wasn't the best idea. And he killed so many people. And what ended up, so yeah, he allied all these people against him. Another thing that happened was that Paul's wife, the emperor's daughter, was feeding Shawnee contraceptives in her food. So they weren't able to have kids, and they didn't know why. Well, Paul knew why, because he can see the future. But Paul also saw in the future that if Shawnee does have kids, either she dies in childbirth or she gives birth and then is targeted and is essentially tortured by his enemies, and it's a horrible fate. Paul's daughter, that is, because he saw a daughter. That was the child he would have. Basically, the whole book is him dodging assassination attempts, like back to back to back. His sister is now a teenager. Duncan, Idaho, who died saving Paul in the first book, he's brought back as a clone. He doesn't have any of his original memories. It was a gift of goodwill from the Tleilaxu. Not goodwill, because he had a secret. He was like a sleeper agent, and he had a program in him to kill Paul. But basically, he had metal eyes. He had like robot eyes, because so Dune frowns upon computers. They don't like computers or even that much technology. But I think cybernetic like replacements are okay, because yeah, it's like he had metal eyes. And he was also a mentat, which is kind of like the like really, really smart people of the Dune universe, because they have to have another way to be able to compute stuff. So they trained humans to act like computers. Kind of like how we have like human calculators today, like those kids that can like see like a ton of numbers for just a little bit and then like actually add them all together and get it right. Kind of like that, but for like everything. So this new Duncan, Idaho, who was called Hate, I think, he was trained as a mentat and also as a philosopher. It was kind of a weird combo, because it's one logical, one kind of like interpretive. And someone just like, anyway, I think someone just threw up outside. Anyway, anyway, goddamn. Anyway, so Paul's dodging these assassination attempts, and eventually he sees like, okay, I have to go to this village. It was a cul-de-sac, so he's like, you have to go to the neighborhood and visit one of the veterans who had like a life-changing experience when he saw water on a planet for the first time, like an ocean. He like had a life-changing experience, and he kind of just was like, oh, well, screw this Paul guy. This isn't worth it. And he retired immediately. Paul treated all his veterans very well, but this guy just didn't stand for anything Paul did. And this guy is living with he's living with a girl who's actually the shapeshifter in disguise. The shapeshifter like climbed through all of Paul's ranks, infiltrated, was doing a lot of spy work. And he also had this little person, Bijaz, I don't know. And this guy was also part of the assassination attempt. He kind of knew what was going on. And Paul and Bijaz and the old veteran are talking, and eventually Paul knows shit's about to hit the fan. He leaves the cul-de-sac, and basically a stone burner goes off, which is like kind of like a nuke, but like isolate, like a vertical nuke. So basically, like it takes nuclear power and it burns through the planet, and eventually a fully charged one will burn through the planet's core and basically split the planet in half. They're banned, obviously, by their own version of the Geneva Convention. I think it's just called the Great Convention by the Landsraad, which is like the leading political body. And because Dune very much has like a dichotomy of like political and economic systems. Like they have the emperorship and the Landsraad, like a monarchy and like a democracy kind of merged. And then also their economy, they have transportation anywhere and the means to acquire the money to pay for that transportation. But anyway, a stone burner goes off. But what stone burners ended up being used for was that, not fully charged, they let out this lethal type of, or not lethal, they let out this type of radiation. It's called J radiation. It's like J something. J rays? I don't even know. But basically, it would make everyone in the immediate vicinity blind. It would blind people. I can't see. So Paul's in the neighborhood, so are a ton of his forces. They all go blind. And this is one of the coolest parts of the book. They all go blind, but Paul still can see with the future. So he uses that kind of future sight to be his new set of eyes. So he just, instead of looking where he's going to be in a while, he's looking at where he's going to be in the next like half a second or second, and he just uses that to get around everywhere. And, you know, the Fremen already think he's the Messiah, so they kind of just go crazy with this. They're like, because in the epigraphs for the chapters, you can see, which are kind of like the quotes from books in the universe that Frank Herbert puts at the beginning of all the chapters. There's literal songs being written about him, about how he lost his sight, yet he still sees for all of us. It's like the coolest sequence ever, and Paul's basically just leading his army blind, because the Fremen have a stereotype against blind people. Basically, if you go blind, you are told to walk into the desert until a sandworm eats you. They do not like blind people, but Paul is an exception because he was the Messiah and he could still see. And at this point in the story, Chani switched her diet, and so she was off those contraceptives, immediately pregnant. And so she spends a little time with Paul. She eventually goes to a siege, though, to give birth. And all throughout the book, Paul's kind of poking and prodding Duncan and trying to make him really uncomfortable so that Duncan will remember who he was. And then there's this whole really weird bit. And this is like, I don't know why he does this. It's very prevalent in his other books. He does like a mostly okay job of keeping it out of Dune, but there's like some random scenes. Frank Herbert was a freak. Dude, and he was putting all this weird romantic tension between Paul's sister and Duncan, Idaho. Paul's sister, so Paul's mom took that water of life while she was pregnant, which is a very big no-no because it creates an abomination. So the child that you end up giving birth to also is a Reverend Mother, and she is born with full-on sentience and all the same memories. So while she's like technically, in terms of knowledge and wisdom, she's an adult, she's still like 14. I've seen some people say she's 16. I don't know where they get that number from, because I'm pretty sure it's 12. It's very clear it's like, oh, it's only been 12 years. Because I don't think she was 4 by the end of Dune. Maybe I'm wrong. But anyway, she's like 14 or 16. And there's so much romantic tension between her and Duncan. Like, they full on just make out in part of the book. And it's so weird. It's like, it's not... like, reading the next book, to Children of Dune, it is not plot essential for this. Like, there's no reason for it other than to just weaken Duncan's like emotional barriers. But Paul was already doing that. I don't know why he does that. Frank Herbert's a weird dude. He was really smart. Like, he came up with some crazy ideas, but he was so weird. Basically, him and Alia end up getting together, and then at the end of the book, Paul wants to visit his wife as she gives birth. He knows she already died giving childbirth to his daughter. Oh my God, the dude's still like, must be like right outside the window, and I just can't see him. He goes to Duncan, and Paul eventually says the exact trigger words that are supposed to make Duncan kill him. And that's when Duncan breaks his conditioning, because in his original life, he loved Paul so much. He loved Paul like a son. And Duncan breaks that conditioning and gets his old memories back, and it's supposed to be a groundbreaking moment. And by this point, Irulan is kept in isolation from Paul. She's kept away from him. Because Paul knows who all these collaborators are. The navigator is killed. The old lady is killed. Bijaz is either killed or held in captivity at this point. I think he dies in interrogation in like a deleted scene. I say deleted scene. It's like a removed chapter. Duncan, Idaho is, brought back. So now it's just Irulan and the face dancer, who's kind of kept in the shadows this whole time, because it's heavily implied that he is not part of the attempt to kill Paul. He is part of the Tleilaxu's agenda. And basically, Paul goes to visit his kids with Duncan, his sister, everyone. And he finds out that Chani had twins. And that was like supposed to be a crazy moment, because despite him seeing every future, he didn't see that he would have a son and a daughter. But at this point, he can't even appreciate it that much, because his wife's dead, and so is his reason to live. Because him and Chani were like deeply, deeply in love, and Paul just couldn't live without her. And so Paul's mourning his wife. He names his kids Leto, so he has a second Leto after the first one died, and Ganima, which is it's a tradition. It's a Fremen. It's not a name. It wasn't supposed to be used as a name, but the word Ganima in the Fremen language means war trophy. And he names his daughter that. So it's supposed to be kind of like taboo or like weird. But guess who like shows up last second? It's Scytale, the face dancer, and he just basically holds Paul's kids at knife point. He's overjoyed that they found out how to bring back memories, and so he already reported that back, that Duncan regained his memories, and basically he pulls Paul's kids at knife point and says, "I want all of your money, the throne, everything you have. We want it. The Tleilaxu want it." And Paul's like, "Okay, Alia, you talk to this guy. I don't even want to talk to someone I can't see. And so Alia is about to. Alia kind of becomes like a villain in the next book, but in this book, she very much was looking out for Paul's kids, and so she was ready to give it all up for Paul's kids, but eventually Paul gains, because as soon as Paul reached Shawnee, his vision gave out. He couldn't see the future anymore. He couldn't see anything because he was simply just because he didn't lose the powers, because he has it in the next book. Spoiler. I already said spoiler. He just does. He's literally too depressed to even use it, and but eventually he gains it back for a split second, but not his vision. It's the perspective of his son in the cradle, and using that vision, it's weird because he's like seeing himself in a second person perspective. So he kind of just starts shifting in his seat, getting a sense of like how he's feeling and what he's moving. And it's like the coolest scene ever. But basically, Scytale is like getting ready to swindle the Atreides family. He just grabs a knife out of his pocket, stands up, throws it like across the room, nails Scytale straight in the eye, kills him instantly. It was like the coolest thing ever. He just got his vision back long enough to keep his family safe. And Alia started getting really sad. He's like, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. He was gonna kill him." And he was like, "No, I totally get it." Irulan was 100%. Irulan was so remorseful. Irulan was sobbing that Chani died because of her actions, and she was even more distraught that Paul's kids were going to be killed by her plan. So she vows from that day to be loyal to the Atreides and watch over Paul's kids. And it's a really sweet moment. And Irulan genuinely is like a really good person for the rest of the book or the series. And but Paul decides that there's nothing left for him, and following Fremen traditions, he must walk into the desert to die by the hands of a sandworm. So that's how the book ends. It's really sad. Paul walks away, leaving behind his entire life to die. His kids are born. Alia is named a regent of the empire, so basically she gets to rule it until Paul's kids are old enough to. Irulan will be the caretaker, and basically they just got to figure out how to run things now that Paul's done. But it's such a cool book, and it ties up Dune so perfectly. I really wish Dune was 4 parts instead of 3, and they could have easily just made this part of Dune. Would have definitely it would have made it a harder read, but it would have cemented it as like one of the best books of all time. Yeah, that was it.